Okay, so this is the Life Passage Adolescent group with Eli Passen, Annie Riemersma, Trent Ovell, and Tyler Sanders.
All right, I will start us off. So the first thing to talk about are what challenges parents and children might face that are inherent to this time in adolescence. And so some of the sources I found kind of laid out three specific things for the children. One's a biological factor, one's a cognitive factor, and one's a psychological factor. So I kind of boiled that down into a little bit more of a bite-sized thing. So puberty is probably one of the biggest things that happens in adolescence that changes everything. Sex and the hormones and the changes that go on in a child's life, that is crucial and critical and can cause a lot of challenges for both parents and children. Second thing would be the brain development of adolescents at this time. It's surprisingly a lot different depending on the age of people, what happens to their brain. And in adolescence specifically, it is quite a madhouse going on up here. So number three, the identity crisis. You're coming into your own in adolescence. You're trying to figure out who you are. You're distancing yourself from parents and so forth like that. And so those three things really kind of sum up the challenges in my mind of the general challenges that a child faces. Second category, parents. Parents, on the other hand, see all of this going on in their child, and they have these three things come out from that. So parents can start thinking, who is this child? It's not this sweetest, innocent boy or girl that I was raising before. They're changing, they're developing, they're adulting, for lack of a better word. And so the parents can feel like they don't even recognize their child. Second thing, parents can have a negative outlook, kind of going with the first one, just seeing all of the trouble, all of the changes, all of the crazy things that didn't happen a few years ago are now coming in, kind of crashing over, and parents can face a really negative outlook on parenting. And then the third one is just this idea that, the parent is the one that fixes it all. They're gonna take this bad child and they're gonna fix them up, make them well, and all of these bad things can be solved with strict rules and stuff like that. So those are the three for each challenges that I saw when researching adolescence. So
moving on to the next part, safety concerns for the adolescent from the child/adolescent's perspective and the parent's perspective. Something to keep in mind as pastoral care happens in this situation is that drugs are often prevalent, and especially the high school age bracket. So one of the sources that I looked up showed that by 12th grade, half of the adolescents that walk through that phase in their life have misused a drug at least one time. This is important to know because drugs do play a huge role in most, especially public schools, even middle schools. I know from my own experience being involved in different friend groups, that stuff starts early. It doesn't start in high school, but even 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, that range. And also, especially in our culture, specifically the United States, there has been a major outbreak of violence. And these are extreme examples, but these are ones that would fall into this category of safety. Potential violence should be taken into consideration. Another source that I found was through CNN, was that there have been on average one school shooting per week in 2018. If you just looked at the start of the year to the end of the year, it would be on average one per week, which is more than we've ever seen any time in history in our country. And on the parents, I guess we're not on the parents' side yet. Yeah, there you go. On the parents' side, there needs to be at least some education going in as as we walk into situations of pastoral care that there may be some division between the adolescent and the parent. It could be as extreme as physical, verbal abuse that's happening from the parent to the adolescent. Another third party may be involved, whether we know it or not. Child protection services could be something that has played a role. I know that there's been times that I've heard in the past of different coaches or parents or teachers that are involved with this type of behavior, and pastoral figures have tried to step in. And we need to be aware that, especially coming out of Judy Crossman's class, we affirm this over and over and over, that we are not the professionals for everything. We're good at helping for spiritual, emotional health, but a lot of times if there's mental or serious tragedy happening, there is a time of referral. And this is extremely important. A lot of pastors forget this and they get themselves into a lot of legal trouble. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So when I was doing this communication concerns, the main thing that I found is that a lot of teens might not want to talk or know how to express their feelings toward any certain situation. So something that I found is like journaling, making them write it out would be helpful for them, just to kind of write it out. So it's kind of like that internal process, so they didn't have to say it out loud. And just kind of this whole process of that they might not know what to say. So it's very important that you, like we talked about in Judy's class, like you seek to understand, but just really let them talk and do a lot of listening, and don't just try to like rule over them or tell them what to do, because they're teens and they want to be their own independent person. So you shouldn't try to force them to like say something or make them feel a certain thing. And so with that, if you're counseling someone, it's very important to affirm them, just who they are as a person, and then also make sure that they know that whatever they say is confidential, and just be positive and hopeful. Don't like guilt trip them into anything. So make sure you're using positive and helpful words to just reinforce who they are, and really just help them understand the situation that's going on. And something else that was super huge was don't force them to talk like an adult, because that's not where they are cognitively, or just in life. They're not on that stage yet, so they don't know how to process like an adult. So just give them free space to process like a teen when communicating with them.
Yeah, I remember Judy told us a story, I don't know, in our class at least, that she had an adolescent come in that the parents wanted him to talk to her, and she said that he obviously didn't want to, and so he sat down and was kind of pouting about it, and Judy tried to talk and he just wasn't opening up. And then all of a sudden she's like, I want to type some emails if you don't mind. And the adolescent eventually, over time, while Judy is just typing emails, just kind of small talk, not really even trying to dig into what's the actual need was, but through that small talk and allowing him to control the situation, the conversation, that it actually brought more conversation out of it. What to do in crisis and trauma. Presence is an extremely part of what we do as pastors and caregivers, and this doesn't change for adolescents. This was in the 48 Hours book. One of the things we hear from survivors who have lost a loved one suddenly or unexpectedly is that they did not want their loved one to die alone. So from that statement right there, we know that presence is an extremely important thing of what we do as caregivers and pastors. Last year, we had a family, the Roach family. The father killed himself. 4 kids. One of them is our age. He's the oldest, and then one of them was freshman year of college, and the other two, the other one's in high school, another was in 5th grade at the time. And so father killed himself, and it was still a tragic. I mean, it was a crazy situation. The anniversary of it was last week, and I was unable to get there because we were up in Marion, but I knew from people telling me, my parents telling me that they instantly just went over to their house. And the lead pastor was there from our church. The youth pastor was there for the adolescents. And that was a huge deal for the specifically for the high school student, that his youth pastor was there. And then I have my youngest brother is good friends with him. And so he was there too to help him and just talk to him, and that presence really mattered to them. And talking to the wife, because she works in the church, and she's continuously tells me that the reason that they were able to get through it somewhat was that there was just always a presence of people wanting to help and being there, and that was just goes to show that presence is an important part of pastoral care in general, but especially for adolescents, because they're at that point in time where they're still growing, like Tyler said, is the physical changes. And so we have to get their upper and lower brain to work together again. And from Whole Brain Child, it says, as you might expect, a person's brain works best when the upstairs and downstairs are integrated with each other. So a parent's goal should be to help build and reinforce the metaphorical stairway that connects the child's upper and lower brain so that the two can work as a team. And I know it's a parenting book, but the principle is still there, that presence matters, and getting the adolescent to get out of that fight or flight stage so that the lower part of the brain isn't controlling everything is really important. And the presence of the pastor can start that process of getting both parts working again.
All right. So next thing, talking about caring for congregates during what we'd call common life passages. So kind of just to start off, a general definition that will kind of help piece this together. A common life passage, I would say, is an event that, generally speaking, of course there's exceptions to every rule, every human being has or will go through, examples like puberty, getting in trouble with a boy or girl, rebelling against your parents. These are things that, generally speaking, everybody has experience with one way or the other. And so what can we do as far as caring for congregates? First and foremost, presence, like we've already talked about. But another thing is the whole body, the community of the church coming together and being able to help one another. And so in a counseling type setting, it'd be really important just to kind of reassure someone that this is not, depending on what it is, of course, is not necessarily a unique situation. It's natural and normal, especially for a teenager, coming up, has no idea, what's going on with them, what's going on in life.
Yeah.
And it's really important to kind of make it a common thread for all the teens growing up then, and to get all the people in the church to rally around them. And I made a note to make sure not to minimize any situation that might actually be going on, whether it's details or anything that's different than somebody else's experience. But generally speaking, this sense of normalized common life passages. Second thing is just to understand that the Lord understands the situations in all of our lives. He is compassionate. Hebrews 4:15 talks about how he was tempted in every way and yet was without sin. So Jesus knows what's going on in our lives. Whether or not he actually lived that exact moment that we're living right now, he is at least compassionate and empathetic to our situation and is there and willing to walk alongside us. And talked about the community of the church just rallying around and lending their experience, and something that's crucial and huge for every youth, every adolescent growing up, every teenager, every whatever, is that they need to have a strong adult person in their life that will help them be successful, that will disciple them, that will be in their life to be a pillar, a foundation, to help them in times of trial, when maybe the common life passages go beyond common. But yeah, just all of these things are crucial to getting through these common life passages.
Yeah, so pastoral concerns, more on the side of like, what should we be concerned about with these kind of stages of life that they're in? I know this has kind of been touched on, but maybe we'll unpack it a little bit more. Like we've mentioned before, the adolescent brain is rapidly changing, specifically the prefrontal cortex, which is part of decision making. There's a great pruning that's happening. Different sources affirm that all over the place. Adolescents, greatly, especially in this part of their life, are desiring freedom from their parents and want to be respected as an actual human being and not as a child anymore. I know there were several moments in my life, and I'm sure all four of us as we look back, where we wanted to rebel because we really just wanted to be treated as a normal person, and we didn't want to be babied. This has to be taken into consideration as caregivers as we go into situations, knowing, okay, if there's conflict, especially between the adolescent and the parent, or just in the adolescent's life, part of that is not always bad motives, but sometimes it's just a pure motive of I want to be respected, and that's not always dealt with in a proper way. But on the parent side, I think there needs to be a level of compassion for them as well. Depending on where the rest of their kids are, age-wise, they will experience a sort of grief or a level of, just sadness sometimes of, wow, their kids are moving on to more into that adult stage as they move from toddlers to adolescents to adults. That has to be taken into consideration. And I know from experience and through different parts of our reading that parents are under just a great amount of stress, especially during this time. Kids are more likely, like we said, to be in that rebellious or maybe even stubborn phase of I know better. I don't like you because you're my parents. I think I know better because I'm going to be moving on to high school soon, or I'm the cool kid at school, whatever that stage may be. I mean, these stages allow for good ministry opportunities, but the caretaker has to evaluate seriously kind of the stage that the parent is in or the adolescent.
Yeah. So when I saw the entire family, my thought process immediately went to the family systems theory that we talked about in our undergrad counseling class, and just how every person in the family is connected in some way, shape, or form through whatever. So just for the family, it's important to know in counseling an adolescent or just talking about them to equip the parents or caretakers or whoever the signs of depression and suicide, just that quietness, laziness, change in sleeping or eating habits, drawing away from their friends or other things that they enjoy. Just kind of keeping an eye on that. And then something else was that the teen could be angry at a parent or themselves, in a situation of divorce. Specifically, they could blame it on themselves for causing the divorce or on the other parent for leaving the other parent. But I found that it's just helpful to sit with them and just let them explore their feelings and just talk it out. And then the teen might try to, form a triangle with you and just between you as a counselor and them, and just try to trash talk, I guess, their other parent or whatever, depending on the situation. And then just, as adolescents, teens want to be independent, just knowing that it's a real possibility that they could try to run away or just disengage from the family. So be on the lookout for that as well.
And there is our works cited. So. And